Hello and welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. Talks to form a new Greek government collapsed on Tuesday in Athens, forcing the Greek president to call new elections that will take place on the 17th of June. Now, Greece faces weeks of instability and threatens once again to plunge Europe into a new crisis. My guest today is Anni Podimata. She's the Vice President of the European Parliament. She was born in Athens and she's a member of the Greek Socialist Party. Mrs. Podimata, thank you for joining us. We want to know, of course, whether your country has become ungovernable. You will tell us in more details. But first, the situation seems very difficult. As I said before, there will be new elections. This because no consensus was reached following the previous elections. Who is responsible for the deadlock?
First of all, I would like to express my regret for the fact that the political leaders have not been able to reach an agreement and form a coalition government, because this was clearly the mandate sent by the Greek voters during the elections of the 6th of May. And it is also, if I'm allowed to say, a lack of responsibility and maturity from some political leaders, at least, to take the mandate of the Greek voters and form a coalition government. You know that the situation is, as you described it, very difficult. Unfortunately, there has been a lot of populism during the pre-electoral campaign that took place in Greece. And my first conclusion is that if there is a lesson to learn from the previous election, is the fact that we could and we should most probably have avoided the elections in this crucial period of time.
Mrs. Podimata, when you say a lack of maturity on behalf of some parties, I guess you're pointing the finger at Alexis Tsipras, the leader of Syriza. This is a new left-wing party which is anti-austerity, which wants to renegotiate the bailout. But they tell you it's your mistake, it's the mistake of the traditional parties who put this country into this mess.
I clearly agree, I certainly agree that among the messages sent by the Greek voters was the expression of anger, the expression of disregard towards the dominant political system. That means mainly the two political parties that have governed Greece so far.
To better understand where things stand nowadays, let's watch our report.
A transitional cabinet of technocrats and diplomats has been sworn in Greece. Their sole task, to steer the debt-ridden Eurozone state into repeat elections on the 17th of June. Panayotis Pikramenos, a former judge, will lead them as Greece's interim prime minister. It's all a compromise. After 10 days of negotiations failed to produce a coalition government, Pikramenos is under no illusions.
This is a difficult job at a difficult time. This will be just a caretaker administration.
Greece returns to the polls in 1 month's time, and analysts are predicting a big win for Syriza to consolidate its breakthrough in the last election. The radical leftist bloc is set to take the biggest share of seats in parliament. Syriza has risen in popularity thanks to its anti-austerity stance.
The people will now have their say again, so that the country can have a left-wing government that will annul this bailout agreement, which brings poverty and bankruptcy, and that will lead the people safely out of the crisis.
Worrying words for the IMF. It's decided to suspend all contact with Greece until the parliamentary elections and a new government is formed. Without the EU-IMF bailout money, Greece will default on its debt and could be forced out of the Eurozone.
As we saw, the elections which took place on the 6th of May saw the rise of so-called anti-austerity parties. It's the case with Syriza, but also with other parties. Where do we go next? Because the risk really is that on the 17th of June, these parties will gain even more momentum. Now, these are parties which want to renegotiate the bailout that was agreed. To which creditors say, well, you can do this, but then we will cut your credit lines.
I'm sure that this time the voters will be much more aware of the challenges of the dilemma that lie ahead of us. And we have to make a clear distinction between political positions and populism, as I pointed out before, because as you can imagine, nobody is in favor of austerity. What we're saying, what the socialists were saying from the very beginning, and have assumed also, as you know, the responsibility to deal with the crisis in 2009, is that austerity on its own, just austerity, cannot work because it's not efficient in creating a way out of the crisis. What we were saying from the very beginning is more or less what the President of the French Republic, François Hollande, the newly elected, points out, that we need to combine austerity measures, fiscal adjustment measures, with measures promoting, encouraging creation of jobs and development and growth.
In retrospect, was it a mistake to sign the bailout deal under the terms that were imposed on Greece at the time? I remind our viewers that it was George Papandreou who signed the deal. Was it a mistake?
Well, I'll tell you very clearly my position. I think that at the moment that the crisis collapsed, erupted, neither we, Greek authorities, neither our European partners were fully aware of the characteristics, the extent of the crisis, and most importantly, of the means, the tools to deal with the crisis. The European Union, the Eurozone, had no mechanisms to deal with such a crisis because all the architecture of the Eurozone, and I would even say of the European Union, was an architecture with a lot of deficiencies. If you ask a country to proceed in a fiscal adjustment and in a so ambitious fiscal adjustment in such a short period of time, then you risk to create the conditions for failure, as it was the case with the deeper than expected recession, which was created in Greece, and lack of trust from the financial markets.
The rise of anti-austerity parties, if I can call them this way, does it mean that an increasing number of Greek people want to leave the Eurozone, want to reinstall the drachma?
No, not at all, because if you follow all the surveys and the gallops that have been published before the elections and most important after the elections, 75 or up to 80% of the Greek citizens, when asked, they are asking the new government, and I hope that we will be able to form a government the soonest as possible, just after the elections of the 17th of June. So the citizens ask the Greek government to do whatever it takes, whatever it is necessary to secure Greece's participation, membership in the Eurozone.
But this is providing your party, the PASOK, and the Conservatives perform better than they did on the 6th of May. Now, what polls seem to suggest is quite the contrary, that the anti-austerity parties will rise even further.
No, I don't think so. I really think that the messages are clear, that the challenges in the Greek society are clear right now, and that there will be a mature choice in the elections of the 17th of June. And when I'm saying mature, certainly Greek people will have all the rights to choose the parties that they will have to form a coalition government, because it's almost certain that no party will take the majority in order to form a government on its own.
Now, this program is co-produced with the Robert Schuman Foundation, a leading think tank, which I know you know very well. Its President Jean-Dominique Giuliani had a question he wanted to ask you. Let's listen.
Shouldn't Greece be more thankful? Since you became a EU member in 1981, you received more than 90 billion euro from the EU. So I have to question, how can a government let the deficit and the debt explode like this? And the second question is, you are a member of the European Parliament. What can the EU do if the Greek people do not want to keep their promises in return of European aid?
Ani Podimata, this is a question that a lot of
Very
people are
direct
asking.
question, certainly.
What can Europe do to help your country if the Greeks don't want to keep their promises?
But I wouldn't like to not to answer to the first part of the question. That means, yes, that we are fully aware and we are grateful for the financial support that we have received so far from our partners, and also for the financial support that we have received during the previous years of our membership in the European Union. And I absolutely share the comment of the president of the Robert Schuman Foundation that this money has not been managed in a responsible way from the previous government, and that's very much in combination with what I pointed out in the beginning of our conversation, and that's also the reject of the Greek voters. The Greek voters rejected the way the country has been governed
and the traditional
during years.
parties,
And
including
yes,
your
but this
party,
is not a
the
rejection
PASOK.
of Europe. This is clearly...
What can Europe do? What can Europe do if the Greeks don't want the bailout the way it is now?
No, that's what I was saying about populism, because there has been a lot of confusion from some political leaders, especially political leader of Syriza that you asked me before, because he has built his electoral campaign in an illusion that means being a member of the Eurozone, but without any adjustment program. This is just not possible, and that's why I was saying before that this time the positions, the messages, the challenges are there, and there is no excuse for anyone not to understand. So I think that ahead of the next elections, the Greek voters, the Greek citizens are fully aware of the choices that they have to make. Yes, being a member of the Eurozone means that we have to respect the rules that we have agreed together. And when we are in a difficult situation, as it is the case today, and we receive financial support from our partners, we have to respect the terms and the conditions of this financial support. But the third point would be, since the motivation of this financial support is to help Greece and the Eurozone to exit from the current crisis in the shortest period of time. Let's try to work together, us, Greeks, and our European partners, in order to find the best way to make the program more efficient, more effective, more balanced, and more socially fair. I'm just saying that the motivation has to be the compliance.
Mm-hmm.
We have to give a hope, a perspective to the Greek citizens.
Now,
Just one thing. One of the reasons, in my view, that the first program has failed in the sense that it was not socially acceptable is that a part of the Greek society perceived, believed, felt like the motivation was the punishment and not the support to help out of the crisis.
What is your feeling regarding your partners? I want to show you the cover of a leading German magazine, Der Spiegel. You will see it says Acropolis adieu in French. The feeling in some German circles is that it's time to call it a day. It's time for Greece to leave the Eurozone. What is your feeling? Where do you think your partners stand, particularly Germany?
Well, I think that this is exactly what we have to avoid. And I also think that we should have learned the lessons of this kind of insultations, of reproduction of stereotypes that have been manifested in several occasions during the crisis, not only from the part of German magazines or newspapers or whatever, but also from our side. But this is very clearly very destructive. What we are faced to today is not only to deal with the concrete consequences of the economic and social crisis. I mean, if we don't prioritize at the same time this rise of national egoisms, of extremism that we see rising all over Europe, in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, then we risk to create a gap between the European project and the European citizens, which it will be extremely difficult to fulfill in the future.
Anni Podimata, thank you very much. I remind our viewers that you are the Vice President of the European Parliament and a member of the Greek Socialist Party.
Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe from Brussels, from the European Parliament. Goodbye.